The frontier colony of New Haven hung like a dying ember at the edge of known space. Its 3 moons casting pale shadows across the settlement's failing energy barriers. Beyond the perimeter, the Krell Armada waited with the patience of apex predators, their crimson warships forming a noose that tightened by the hour. Commander. Lisa Parker stood at the observation deck of the Human Defense Station, watching the alien fleet through the viewport with exhausted eyes. 2 months of siege had reduced the colony's population from 12,000 to barely 3,000 souls. Food synthesizers had failed 3 weeks ago. Medical supplies were gone. The evacuation transports that were supposed to arrive had been destroyed in the outer rim, their distress signals fading into the void like dying stars. She was preparing to send her final transmission when the sensors screamed. Something was approaching through the Krell blockade. Not a ship, but 2 organic signatures moving at impossible speeds. The defense AI struggled to classify them, its algorithms fracturing against data that defied every known category of life. "You need to see this," Lieutenant Kate Morrison's voice cracked with something between fear and wonder. Through the viewport, Lisa watched as they emerged from the darkness between stars. The first was a woman or something, wearing the shape of a woman. She moved through the vacuum of space as though it were merely air, her form wrapped in what appeared to be living armor of silver and midnight blue that flowed like liquid starlight. Her hair was the color of winter moonlight, impossibly long, streaming behind her like a comet's tail. Her eyes visible even at this distance, through some trick of unknown technology, glowed, with an inner luminescence that spoke of ancient power and desperate determination. But it was her companion that stole Lisa's breath. The dragon was a creature from Earth's oldest myths made flesh and fire. Its scales were the deep purple of bruised twilight, each one edged with gold that seemed to burn with its own inner light. Wings that spanned 300 meters caught the distant starlight. Membranes shot through with veins of molten amber. The creature's eyes were pools of liquid gold, intelligent and ancient regarding the human station, with an awareness that made Lisa's instincts scream warnings her rational mind couldn't process. The woman carried something cradled against her chest, a smaller figure wrapped in tattered cloth. They're requesting permission to dock. Kate's voice trembled. The translation matrix is struggling, but the intent is clear. She's asking for sanctuary. For her, sister. Lisa's tactical training warred with something deeper, something human. The Krell could break through their defenses within hours. Taking in refugees, especially ones this conspicuous, could accelerate their doom. But the way the woman held that small bundle, the protective curve of her body, the desperation in those glowing eyes. Grant docking permission. Bay 7. Full security detail, but hold fire unless I give the order. The docking bay had seen better days. Scorch marks from Krell breaching attempts scarred the walls, and half the lighting panels flickered with unstable power. Lisa waited with 20 armed Marines, their plasma rifles charged but lowered. As the bay doors cycled open to admit something that should not exist, the woman entered first, moving with a grace that seemed to mock gravity itself. Up close, she was breathtaking and terrifying in equal measure. Her armor wasn't technology. Lisa could see now that it was alive, breathing with its wearer, responding to her thoughts. Geometric patterns like circuit boards merged with organic forms that resembled both scales and feathers, constantly shifting as though unable to decide what form to take. The dragon folded itself through the doors with impossible fluidity, its massive bulk compressing through an opening that should have been far too small. It settled behind the woman, wings folded, its presence filling the bay with heat and the scent of cinnamon and burning ozone. "I am Lyra," the woman spoke, and her voice was like music played on instruments humanity had never conceived. The translation field embedded in Lisa's neural implant struggled to convert concepts that existed outside human language. "This is Ember, my companion of 4 centuries. And this?" She unwrapped the bundle slightly, revealing a face that made Lisa's heart clench. The child couldn't have been more than 5 or 6 by human standards. though Lisa suspected age worked differently for whatever species this was. Her features were delicate, almost translucent, with the same ethereal quality as her sister, but dimmed by starvation. Her eyes, once they must have glowed like Lyra's were, dull and unfocused. Her breathing was shallow, labored. "This is Maya, my sister. She is dying." Lisa stepped forward slowly, holstering her sidearm. "What do you need?" Lyra's eyes met hers, and in that moment, Lisa saw the weight of centuries of worlds lost, or of a species scattered to the stellar winds. Food, medical care, time, things your people have, even here at the edge of extinction. In exchange for what? Lisa had to ask, though part of her already knew the answer. The woman who called herself Lyra straightened. Power rolled off her like heat from a star. The dragon behind her raised its head, eyes blazing, and the very air began to shimmer with potential energy. "In exchange," Lyra said, her voice now carrying the weight of an oath that bound the fabric of space itself, "I will break your enemies. I will shatter the Krell Armada. I will give you and your people the time you need to escape this place." She paused, and something ancient and terrible flickered behind her eyes. "I am the last warden of the celestial spires, heir to powers your species has not yet dreamed possible. I have lived through the death of 3 civilizations and the birth of 4 more. I have walked between dimensions and spoken with entities that exist beyond time itself." She looked down at the child in her arms, and all that cosmic power became simply the love of an older sister for a younger one. "But none of that matters if I cannot save her. So I offer you this bargain, Commander Lisa Parker of humanity. Save my sister's life, and I will save your people. This I swear on the names of the forgotten gods and the ashes of my homeworld." The dragon ember released a low sound that vibrated through the deck plates, a note of agreement that seemed to resonate with the fundamental frequency of reality itself. Lisa looked at her Marines, seeing her own thoughts reflected in their faces. They were dead already. The Krell would break through eventually. But this was a chance. Perhaps their only one. She reached out and gently touched the child's fevered forehead. Maya's eyes flickered open for a moment, revealing depths of fear and pain that transcended species. "Dr. Amy Collins to Docking Bay 7, Lisa spoke into her come. Priority medical emergency. And someone get me every food ration we have left." She met Lyra's glowing eyes. "We have a deal. I'll do everything in my power to save your sister. And you." She turned to look at the viewport. "Where the Krell Armada waited in the darkness, you keep your end of the bargain." Lyra shifted Maya into the arms of the medical team that came rushing in, and for a moment her composure cracked. Tears that glowed like liquid starlight ran down her face as she watched them carry her sister away. Then she turned back to Lisa, and the commander saw something in those eyes that made her both terrified and grateful. "I will do more than keep my bargain," Lyra said softly. "I will make the Krell remember why they once feared to venture into this region of space. I will remind them of the old wars, when my people stood as guardians of the younger races." Her hand moved to touch something at her throat, a pendant that seemed to contain a swirling nebula within its crystalline structure. "And I will show them why the Wardens were called the storm that walks between stars." Ember raised its head and released a cry that shook the station. A sound of challenge and fury that seemed to reach across the void and touch the Krell ships themselves. Through the viewport, Lisa could see their formation ripple, as though something ancient and terrible had just announced its presence. The Dragon War was about to begin. Dr. Amy Collins had practiced medicine on 17, different worlds during her 30-year career with the Colonial Medical Corps, but nothing in her experience had prepared her for treating a being like Maya, the child's. Physiology was simultaneously familiar and completely alien. A circulatory system that seemed to operate on principles that defied conventional biology. CELLS that existed partially in dimensions her scanners couldn't fully measure. "Her energy reserves are completely depleted," Amy muttered, studying the holographic displays that surrounded the medical pod where Maya lay. But it's not just malnutrition in the conventional sense. It's like she's starving for something that isn't food, something fundamental. Lyra stood at her sister's side, one hand resting gently on the pod's surface. She had removed her armor ore, Perhaps it had simply receded into her skin. Amy couldn't be sure. Beneath it, she wore a simple garment that seemed woven from solidified moonlight. Despite the simplicity, her presence dominated the medical bay, making the space feel simultaneously too small and somehow infinite. My people draw sustenance from multiple sources, Lyra explained. Her voice controlled, but Amy could hear the strain beneath it. Physical nourishment, yes, but also from the energies that flow between dimensions. From the songs of stars, the dreams of sleeping worlds, the resonance of living things. Eyes. Her eyes never left Maya's face. This placer colony, this besieged and dying world, it has become a void. Too much fear, too much death. There is nothing here for her to draw from except despair. The Krell siege, Amy understood suddenly. They've been systematically destroying everything, not just for military advantage. They've been creating a dead zone. The Krell know what we are. Ember spoke for the first time, the dragon having somehow compressed himself to fit in the corner of the medical bay. His voice was like mountains grinding together, ancient and inexorable. They have hunted the wardens across 3 galaxies. They know to starve the spirit as well as the body. Amy's hands moved across her instruments, adjusting the nutrient flow, trying to compensate for biology she only half understood. I can keep her stable, maybe buy her a few days, but without the kind of energy she needs, ... She will fade, Lyra finished softly, like a star going dark. I have felt it happening for weeks now, ever since we fled the destruction of the outer sanctuaries. Her hand pressed harder against the pod, as if trying to will her own life force into her sister. We have been running for so long. Across dead worlds and through the ruins of civilizations the Krell have already consumed. Maya kept hoping we would find somewhere safe, somewhere the old songs still echoed. But everywhere we went, we found only silence and ashes. A klaxon suddenly blared through the station. Lisa's voice came over the intercom, tight with tension. Lyra, if you meant what you said, now would be the time. The Krell are moving. All of them. Lyra's eyes blazed suddenly, pools of furious light. Stay with her, she commanded Amy. If she wakes, tell her I will return. Tell her the stars themselves could not keep me from her side. She turned to leave, but Amy caught her arm. The doctor ignored the way power crackled around Lyra's skin, the way touching her felt like grasping a live current. Bring me back samples, she said urgently. Anything from the Krell. Their biology might give me a clue to counter whatever they're doing to the energy fields around the colony. Lyra's expression shifted, something like respect crossing her features. You would use the enemy's own nature against them. You think as a warden thinks. She nodded once. I will bring you what you need. Then she was moving. Ember flowing after her like liquid shadow. And Amy was left alone with the dying child. Who might be the key to saving them all? The command deck of the defense station had become Lisa's entire world for 2 months. She knew every failing system, every weakening shield generator, every depleted weapon battery. She had memorized the faces of the dead, the names of the survivors, the exact count of how many hours they had left before the Krell overwhelmed their defenses. She watched through the view screen as Lyra and Ember emerged from the station, and something primal in her hindbrain screamed warnings. The elf woman had changed. The armor she wore now wasn't the flowing, organic thing from before. This was battle plate, angular and fierce, covered in runes that hurt to look at directly. In her hands, she carried a spear that seemed to be forged from captured lightning, its blade flickering between solid matter and pure energy. Her hair had become like solar flares, streaming behind her in defiance of physics. But Ember, the dragon, had transformed into something from humanity's deepest nightmares. He had grown, his body expanding to 3 times his previous size, wings spreading wide enough to eclipse moons. His scales had darkened to the color of the void between galaxies, but each one now glowed with internal fire. His eyes blazed like twin suns, and when he opened his mouth, Lisa could see the roiling plasma that churned in his throat. All ships. The Krell commander's voice came over the comm channel, translated by the station's AI into flat, emotionless human standard. Formation Omega 7. Target the organic anomalies. Eradication protocol. Authorized. 200 Krell warships turned in perfect synchronization. Their weapons sterile things that tore apart molecular bonds and collapsed matter into exotic select Q. Particles charged with light that made Lisa's eyes water even through the filtered viewport. Lyra raised her spear and spoke words in a language that predated human civilization. The universe responded. Space itself seemed to ripple, as though reality had become a pond and Lyra had thrown a stone into its surface. The ripples expanded outward, moving faster than light, and when they touched the nearest Krell ships, those vessels simply ... stopped, frozen in time, their weapons charging but never firing. Their crews caught in eternal milliseconds. Possible, Kate breathed beside Lisa. She's manipulating localized time fields. That level of energy output should Ember struck like a comet made of rage and fire. He crossed the distance to the Krell formation in seconds that shouldn't have existed, his body moving through trajectories that bent causality itself. When he opened his mouth, what emerged wasn't merely fire. It was the death cry of stars, the thermal remnant of creation itself. Flame that burned at temperatures that existed only in the hearts of collapsing galaxies. 10 Krell ships simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, erased. Their matter converted directly into energy that dissipated into the cosmic background radiation. As though they had never been, the formation broke. Lisa had studied Krell tactics for years, preparing for this siege. They never broke formation. Their doctrine emphasized perfect cohesion, overwhelming force through synchronized action. But now, they scattered like fish before a shark, their disciplined ranks dissolving into chaos. But there were too many. For every ship Ember destroyed, 5 more converged on his position. Energy beams that could vaporize asteroids raked across his scales. Missiles that carried payloads of antimatter and stranger things detonated against his wings. The dragon roared in pain and fury, and Lisa watched in horror as sections of his beautiful scales blackened and cracked. As she needed support, Lisa found herself saying, "Target those clusters on the dragon's flanks. Everything we have left." "Commander, that'll drain our reserves completely," Kate protested. If this doesn't work, we're dead anyway." Fire. The station's remaining weapons pitiful compared to what the Krell commanded. But sufficient for this, moment lanced out. Not to destroy, but to distract. To give Ember room to maneuver, to pull pressure off his damaged side. And Lyra noticed the warden turned her attention from the ships she had been freezing in time. And for one brief moment, her glowing eyes met Lisa's through the impossible distance. Something passed between them, recognition, gratitude, the beginning of trust that transcended species. Then Lyra plunged her spear into the void, and the universe screamed. The weapon pierced something deeper than physical space. Lisa's instruments went mad as exotic particles flooded the area, as fundamental forces began to behave in ways they were never meant to. The spear became a focal point, a channel for power drawn from ... somewhere else. Another dimension, another reality, a place where different laws held sway. Light erupted from the spear's tip. Not the light of stars or fire, but something purer, more fundamental. It was the light that had existed before the first atoms formed. The luminescence of pure potential given form. The wave expanded in all directions, moving at speeds that made relativity weep. When it touched the Krell ships, they didn't explode or disintegrate. They transformed. Their weapon systems fused into useless metal. Their hulls became brittle, structurally compromised. Their power cores destabilized, forcing emergency shutdowns in seconds. The Krell armada had been reduced from 200 combat-ready warships to 200 floating pieces of scrap. Ember circled the frozen tableau. And despite his wounds, his voice rang with fierce joy as he sang something in the same ancient language Lyra spoke. Ships began to drift, pulled by invisible currents, into formations that served no military purpose. They formed patterns. Geometric shapes that hurt to perceive fully. Arrangements that resonated with mathematical principles, human science hadn't yet discovered. Warden magic, Kate whispered. They're not just warriors. They're reality. Lyra crashed through the medical bay doors with such force that they tore free from their mountings. Amy had never seen someone move from space battle to bedside in less than 30 seconds. But the warden covered that impossible distance driven by pure maternal desperation. Maya. Lyra's voice cracked, all her ancient power reduced to the anguish of a sister watching death approach. No, no, please. The child's vital signs were barely registering on Amy's monitors. The strange dimensional readings that indicated life in Lyra's species had collapsed to almost nothing. Maya's skin had taken on a translucent quality, as though she were fading out of existence itself. What did you do? Amy demanded, her hands flying across the controls. There's a connection between you two. I can see it in the energy readings. When you used that power out there, it drew from her somehow. Lyra's hands hovered over her sister's body, shaking. We are bonded, she whispered. Soul-linked, your people might say. When our parents were killed in the Krell's purge of the celestial spires, I performed the rite of infinite protection. My life force sustains hers. We share strength, share pain, share existence itself. Tears streamed down her face. But the battle, I drew too deeply. I felt her weakening, but I couldn't stop. There were too many enemies. Too much at stake. ... You prioritized saving the colony over your sister's life, Amy said. Not accusingly, but with sudden understanding. That's why you made the bargain. You knew the battle might kill her, but at least she wouldn't die slowly from starvation. Ember filled the doorway, too large to fully enter. It is the Warden way, the dragon said, his voice heavy with ancient sorrow. To sacrifice everything for those under protection. Lyra carries the oath of her ancestors, 10,000 generations of guardians who held the line against the darkness. She cannot be anything other than what she is. Well, she's going to have to learn, Amy snapped, making a decision that went against every regulation in the medical handbook. Because I can't save Maya with conventional medicine, and the energy she needs doesn't exist in this dead zone. Which means she turned to face Lyra fully. You're going to have to give it back to her. Reverse the flow. I tried. Lyra's voice was broken during the flight back, but I'm depleted. The battle took everything. I have nothing left to give. You have your core, Ember said quietly. Your essential self. No, Amy protested. That would kill you. We need another source of... She stopped, an idea crystallizing. The Krell, you said they feed on the same energies. Their ships are still out there, powered down, but not destroyed. Alira's head snapped up. You want to harvest their dimensional drives. Extract the accumulated energy they've been using to create the dead zone. Can it be done? It would be dangerous. Unstable. The Krell configure their drives to resonate with entropy, with decay. Feeding that to Maya would be like giving poison to a dying patient. Amy smiled grimly. Then it's a good thing I'm the best. Detox specialist in the Colonial Medical Corps. I didn't survive the plague of Centauri Prime by playing it safe. She turned to her console. Already plotting trajectories. We need samples from at least 3 different ship classes. Their drive cores will have different resonance patterns. If I can find commonalities, maybe I can filter out the toxic elements and convert the rest into something Maya can metabolize. Lisa's voice came over the intercom. Are you seriously proposing to board hostile Krell vessels and steal their power cores? In case you forgot, we're running on fumes here. We can barely keep life support active. Then I'll go alone, Lyra said, straightening despite her exhaustion. Give me coordinates. I'll retrieve what the doctor needs. You're in no condition, Amy began. My sister's dying. I am in whatever condition is necessary, Ember rumbled. She speaks truth. A warden's strength is measured not by what remains, but by what can be found when nothing remains. Lisa appeared at the medical bay entrance, having sprinted from the command deck. You're not going alone. We have 1 functional shuttle left. I'm coming with you, along with the security team. If we're stealing Krell technology, we might as well do it right. She met Lyra's glowing eyes. You kept your end of the bargain. Time for us to keep ours. This is madness, Kate said, arriving behind Lisa. The Krell could return at any moment. Their reinforcements could be hours away. Then we don't have time to argue. Lisa turned to her second-in-command. You have the station. If the Krell return before we do, get everyone to the escape pods. Don't wait for us, Commander. That's an order. 20 minutes later, the battered shuttle separated from the station, carrying Lisa, Lyra, and 6 Marines who had volunteered for what might be a suicide mission. Ember remained behind, coiled around the medical bay in a living shield. His presence alone enough to keep Maya's vitals from flattering entirely. The Krell vessels drifted in the void like dead fish, their hulls dark except for emergency lighting. Up close, they were even more horrific than the view screens had suggested, organic and mechanical elements, merged in ways that seemed to mock the concept of life itself. Chitin and metal, flesh and circuits, all bound together by principles that existed outside standard physics. The lead battleship, Lyra said, pointing to a massive vessel that looked like a cross between a shark and a cathedral. Its drive core will be the most powerful, but also the most dangerous. Lisa guided the shuttle toward a breach in the ship's hull damage from Ember's assault. Setting down on the outer hull, we'll have to go in on foot. The interior of the Krell ship was a nightmare given form. The corridors were too narrow and too wide simultaneously, existing in more dimensions than the human eye could properly process. The walls breathed, or seemed to, and the air itself felt wrong, too thick, too cold, carrying scents of copper and decay. Stay close, Lyra warned. The Krell grow their ships partially alive. Even damaged, they may have defensive responses. They pushed deeper into the vessel, following Lyra's instincts and the guidance of handheld scanners that struggled to map the twisted geometry. Behind them, 2 Marines remained at the breach as a fallback point. The rest pressed forward into darkness. The drive chamber, when they found it, was beautiful in a terrible way. A sphere of crystallized void stuff hung in the center of the room, suspended by fields of force that made reality shimmer and warp. Energy flowed through it in patterns that resembled neural networks and star formations simultaneously. Lyra breathed. The dimensional accumulator. It's been feeding on the dying hopes of your colony for months, storing that energy to power their siege weapons. Amy had given them specialized containment vessels, units designed to hold energies that operated outside normal space-time. Lisa and her Marines set them up around the drive core while Lyra prepared to sever the connections. This is going to be loud, the warden warned. And when I break the seals, the ship's automatic defenses may activate. We'll handle it, Lisa said, her Marines taking defensive positions. Do what you need to do. Lyra's hands began to glow, and she started speaking in that ancient language that seemed to make reality itself pay attention. Her fingers traced patterns in the air, and where they moved, the fundamental forces bent and twisted. The containment fields around the drive core flickered, weakened. Alarms began to shriek through the ship. Contact? One of the Marines shouted. Krell biosoldiers, coming from the lower decks. Hold them off, Lisa ordered, raising her own weapon. Just a few more seconds, the drive core came free with a sound like a dimension folding in on itself. Power arced wildly, and Lyra barely managed to channel it into the containment vessels. The room lit up with energies that human eyes weren't designed to perceive, and Lisa felt her neural implants struggling to filter information that threatened to overwhelm her senses. I have it. Lyra shouted. Go, go. They ran. Behind them, the Krell biosoldiers things that were part warrior, part machine, part something that had never been meant to exist in normal space, gave chase. Plasma fire lit up the twisted corridors as Lisa's Marines laid down covering fire. One Marine fell. Then another, buying time with their lives, they burst out of the breach onto the hull. The shuttle's engine's already hot. Get us out of here. Lisa screamed to the pilot. The shuttle lurched away from the Krell vessel, just as something deep in its core detonated. The drive they'd stolen had been integral to the ship's stability, and without it, containment fields were failing throughout the massive craft. Secondary explosions rippled across its length. Punch it, Lisa ordered, and the shuttle's engines screamed as they accelerated back toward the station. Behind them, the Krell battleship folded in on itself, its internal contradictions finally resolving into a spectacular implosion that left nothing but debris and exotic particle radiation. Lisa looked at Lyra, who cradled the containment vessels like they held her sister's life, which, in a way, they did. 2 more to go, the commander said grimly. And I think we just woke up whatever's left of the Krell fleet. Lyra's eyes blazed. Then we moved faster, hit 2 more ships in rapid succession, working with desperate efficiency. Each extraction was smoother than the last as they learned the patterns, understood the risks. But the cost mounted, more Marines fell, and the shuttle took damage that made its systems scream in protest. 3 days of fragile peace followed Maya's recovery. 3 days where the colony dared to hope, where the survivors began to plan for evacuation now that the siege was broken, where 2 species learned to communicate across the vast gulf between their kinds. Maya was still weak, but improving hourly. Amy had set up a special chamber that recycled the purified Krell energy, creating a miniature version of the dimensional resonance the child needed. It wouldn't sustain her forever, but it bought time, weeks, perhaps months. Lisa found herself spending what little free time she had in the observation dome near the medical bay, where Lyra often stood watch over her sister. The warden had changed in subtle ways since the battle, less distant, more present, as though saving Maya had allowed her to finally lower some of the walls she'd built around herself. "Tell me about your world," Lisa said during one such vigil. "The celestial spires. What was it like before the Krell came?" Lyra's eyes grew distant with memory. Imagine mountains that reached beyond atmosphere, their peaks touching the edge of space itself. We built our cities in harmony with them, structures of crystal and song that resonated with the songs of stars. The nights were filled with aurora that spoke in colors your language has no names for, and the days. She smiled sadly. The days were warm with the love of 3 suns, and the Krell destroyed it, consumed it. That's what they do, their entropy made manifest. Creatures that feed on the ending of things. They don't just kill, they erase. They take worlds and render them into states where life cannot remember how to begin again. Lyra's hands clenched. My parents were council wardens, protectors of 1,000 worlds. They died buying time for evacuations, for children to reach the refugee ships. Maya and I were among the last to leave. How long ago? By your calendar? Nearly 5 years? By our experience. Lyra's voice grew hollow, much longer. We fled through the void between dimensions, where time moves differently. We have been running for what feels like centuries. Before Lisa could respond, the station's alarms shattered the moment of peace. Kate's voice burst over the intercom, tight with controlled panic. "Commander, we have incoming. Krell reinforcements." A lot of them. Lisa was already moving, Lyra right behind her. They reached the command deck to find a nightmare rendered in holographic display. Where before there had been 200 Krell vessels, now there were over 1,000. These were fresh ships, undamaged, organized into formations that spoke of grim determination. "They're not here to siege us," Kate said, her face pale. "They're here to make sure nothing survives." That formation is a scorched earth pattern. The lead Krell ship broadcast on all frequencies. And this time the translation matrix captured not just words but intent. Emotion colored by alien psychology, Warden Lyra of the Fallen Spires. Your interference is noted and marked for correction. You have delayed the inevitable, but you cannot prevent it. Surrender yourself, and the child, and the humans may be granted swift extinction. Resist, and we will make their ending last for generations. Generations. One of the tactical officers whispered. "How can an ending? They don't just kill," Lyra said softly. "They trap. They can suspend beings in dying moments that last subjective millennia. They consider it art." Lisa studied the formation, her tactical mind racing through scenarios and finding nothing but failure. "We can't fight that. Even with you and Ember, those numbers, ... are overwhelming," Lyra finished. "Yes, I could perhaps destroy 50, maybe 100 before they swarmed us. And doing so would drain me again, put Maya at risk." Her eyes blazed with fury and frustration. The Krell planned this well. They know I won't sacrifice my sister? Not again. So we surrender? We die if we surrender. Amy's voice came from the doorway. She had Maya with her, the child wrapped in blankets, looking small and frightened but determined. I've studied what we pulled from their drives. The Krell don't understand mercy. Their language doesn't even have a word for it. Maya spoke up, her voice still weak but carrying surprising strength. Let me help. Absolutely not, Lyra said immediately. You're still recovering. I'm recovering because humans risked their lives for me. For us, Maya looked around at the faces on the command deck with eyes that held wisdom beyond her apparent years. You've been protecting me my whole life, Lyra. Let me protect something too. Ember's voice rumbled through the room. The dragon had been coiled around the command deck's exterior. The child speaks with warden truth. Perhaps it is time to stop running and make a stand. Against 1,000 ships. Lyra's voice cracked. Maya, you're not strong enough? No, the child agreed. But we are, together. She reached out her small hand to Lisa. You have something the Krell don't understand? You have unity. Cooperation across species? That's a kind of power, too. It's an idea began forming in Lisa's mind. Something audacious and probably suicidal, but possibly their only chance. The dimensional energy. The purified stuff we've been using to keep Maya stable. Could it be weaponized? Amy's eyes widened. Theoretically, if we could generate enough resonance to create a feedback loop through the Krell's own dimensional drives, but we'd need an amplifier. Something to broadcast across multiple frequencies simultaneously. Dragons are natural conduits for dimensional energy. That's how we bond with them, through resonance across realities. And if we linked multiple sources, Lisa continued, her mind racing, the station's power core, the remaining containment vessels, Ember as the focal point. We could create a cascade, Amy finished. A wave that would overload every Krell drive in range, turn their own weapons into bombs inside their ships. It would also burn out the station's core, Kate pointed out. We'd be dead in space. But the colony ships in the outer system would have time to escape, Lisa said. That was always the goal. By time for evacuation, a Krell commander's voice came over the channel again. You have 30 minutes to respond. Choose wisely, Warden. The human's fate hangs on your decision. Lyra looked at her sister, at this fragile child who had already endured so much. Then she looked at Lisa, at the humans who had shown them kindness when they had every reason to turn them away. Finally, she looked at Ember, her companion of centuries, who had never once questioned or failed her. If we do this, Lyra said slowly, if we make this stand, we commit fully. No retreat, no surrender. We become the line that shall not be crossed. That's what you were always meant to be, Maya said softly. That's what wardens are. That's what you taught me. Lisa extended her hand to Lyra. Partners. One last battle. Lyra took the offered hand, and power sparked between them. Human determination meeting ancient duty. Partners. But not the last battle. The first of many, I think. The Krell need to learn that this region of space is protected now. That Earth and her colonies have their own wardens. Then let's teach them, Lisa said, and turned to her crew. All hands, battle stations. This is not a drill. We're going to do something incredibly stupid, and if it works, we'll save 15,000 lives. If it doesn't work, well, at least we'll go out making a statement. She opened a channel to the entire colony. Attention all ships and stations. This is Commander Lisa Parker. I'm authorizing immediate evacuation. All civilian vessels are to make for the jump point at maximum speed. Military vessels will provide rear guard. You have 30 minutes to get as far from this station as possible. Questions flooded the channels, but Lisa cut them off. There's no time for explanations. Just trust me. And when you're safe, when you reach the inner colonies, tell them what happened here. Tell them that the frontier is under protection. Tell them that the age of the wardens isn't over. She looked at Lyra. Tell them we made sure of that. The preparations took 28 minutes of the 30 they'd been given. Amy jury-rigged connections between the containment vessels and the station's main power core, creating a network that should theoretically amplify and purify the dimensional energy they'd stolen from the Krell ships. Ember positioned himself at the station's highest point, spreading his wings to their fullest extension. Becoming a living antenna, Maya insisted on being part of the ritual, despite Lyra's protests. "I can help stabilize the resonance," the child argued. "I've been feeding on that energy for days. I know its harmonics better than anyone." The evacuation ships were burning hard for the system's edge when the Krell fleet began to advance. Their formation was perfect, overlapping fields of fire creating a grid of death that nothing could penetrate. "They're charging weapons," Kate reported. "Multiple missile launches. They're going to saturate our defenses before they even get in close. Now or never," Lisa said. Lyra took her position beside Ember, her hands on the dragon's scales. Maya stood with them, her small hands joining her sister's. And Lisa, acting on instinct she didn't fully understand, completed the circle. "Link forged," Lyra intoned. "Human will, warden oath, dragon fire, innocent hope. For pillars to hold back the dark, beginning resonance," Amy said from her console, her hands dancing across controls. "Energy flow is stable. Increasing amplitude." The power core began to hum, a sound that started below human hearing but rapidly climbed the scale. Ember added his voice, that ancient song. 6 months after the Battle of New Haven, the Colonial Defense Force headquarters on Threshold Station bustled with activity. The Frontier Command Center had been transformed in the wake of the Krell defeat. New defensive systems, enhanced sensor networks, and most notably, a specialized wing that incorporated both human technology and something far more ancient. Commander Lisa Parker, now promoted to captain, reviewed the latest patrol reports in her office. She offered a view of the wing, where Ember currently rested. The dragon had become something of a mascot for Threshold Station, though mascot seemed an inadequate word for a being who had single-handedly redefined humanity's approach to stellar defense. A chime at her door announced visitors. "Come in." Lyra entered, wearing a uniform that blended Colonial Defense Force regulation with modifications for her unique physiology. Behind her, Maya practically bounced with excitement, her glow fully restored. Her eyes bright with the enthusiasm of a child who had finally found a place to call home. "The new recruits are ready for evaluation," Lyra reported formally, though a smile tugged at her lips. "Though I warn you, they're unconventional." Over the past months, something remarkable had happened. Word of the warden who had saved New Haven spread through the frontier colonies, and then beyond, into the depths of space where other refugees fled from Krell expansion. They came in ones and twos, at first scattered survivors of species thought extinct, isolated remnants of civilizations consumed by the entropy fleet. Some were like Lyra and Maya, members of long-lived species with abilities that seemed like magic to human observers. Others were stranger still, beings that existed partially outside normal space-time, creatures that communicated through mathematical concepts rather than language, entities whose very presence caused instruments to register impossible readings. All of them had one thing in common. They had been running, hiding, surviving alone against an enemy that seemed infinite, until they heard about New Haven, about a warden who had stood her ground, about humans who had honored a bargain even at the cost of their own lives. "Send them in," Lisa said, standing to receive the newcomers with proper respect. They filed into her office, a delegation that would have seemed like a fever dream 6 months ago. There was Cade, a warrior from a species that resembled crystalline birds, his wings folded to fit through human doorways. Beside him stood Nira, whose people had been symbiotic healers before the Krell destroyed their homeworld. And there were others, 7 in total, each representing a different set of skills, each carrying the weight of loss. "We came because Warden Lyra sent word that Earth was building something new." Cade spoke, his voice like wind chimes. "A coalition. A defense force that includes those of us who have been scattered to the cosmic winds." "The Warden's Guard," Lyra said quietly. "That's what they're calling themselves. A multi-species force dedicated to protecting the younger civilizations." Standing against the Krell expansion, Lisa studied the assembled beings. seeing in their eyes the same mixture of hope and determination she'd seen in Lyra's when they first made their bargain. The Colonial Defense Force has authorization from the Inner Worlds Council to expand our operations. We're establishing new protocols for integrated defense, combining human tactical doctrine with the special capabilities each of you brings. Diplomatic way of saying you're not sure how to work with us. Nira said with a musical laugh. We understand. We're not sure either. It's been a long time since any of us operated as part of a coordinated force. Then we'll learn together, Lisa said simply. Lyra and Maya have already begun training programs. Within a month, we'll have mixed teams running patrol routes through the frontier sectors. Within 6 months, we'll have established defensive perimeters around the most vulnerable colonies. And when the Krell come again? Cade asked. Because they will come. They always do. When they come, they'll find us ready. Lisa pulled up a holographic display showing the frontier sectors, now marked with patrol routes, defensive stations, and something new nodes that pulsed with dimensional energy, creating a network of early warning systems based on technology recovered from the Krell ships. They'll find a frontier that fights back, that protects its own. Maya tugged on her sister's uniform sleeve. Can I tell them about the school? Lyra smiled indulgently. Go ahead. We're starting a program, Maya announced excitedly. Human and non-human children learning together. Not just normal school stuff, but training. How to sense dimensional distortions, how to recognize Krell infiltration patterns, how to work across species differences. She looked around at the assembled beings with an earnestness that transcended age, so that the next generation won't have to run like we did, so they'll know how to stand and fight. The Children's Concordance, Lisa explained. It's experimental, but the results so far have been remarkable. Turns out kids are better at adapting to multi-species cooperation than adults. They don't have the preconceptions we do. A proximity alarm chimed softly. Kate's voice came over the comm. Captain, we have incoming ships. Unknown configuration, requesting permission to dock. They're broadcasting warden recognition codes. Lisa and Lyra exchanged glances. More refugees? Lisa asked. Not refugees, Lyra said slowly, a strange expression crossing her face. Those codes. They're from the old guard. Wardens who went into deep space exile centuries ago. Before even my time, they rushed to the command deck, where the view screen showed a sight that made even Ember, coiled around the station's observation spire, rumble with surprise. 3 ships approached, sleek vessels that seemed to bend light around themselves, their hulls inscribed with the same geometric patterns that appeared on Lyra's armor. And riding alongside them through the void of space itself came dragons, not just one, but a dozen. Their scales and colors ranging from deep crimson to silver white, their sizes making even Ember look young. Warden Lyra, of the Celestial Spires, a voice came over the comm, ancient and powerful. I am Elder Warden Kira of the Eternal Watch. We felt the resonance of your stand at New Haven, a light in the darkness that reached even our exile in the deep void. And we have come to see if the old oaths still hold weight in this age. The old oaths hold, she said, her voice catching. The duty remains. The watch continues. Then with your permission, and that of the humans who stood with you, we would join this warden's guard. We would reclaim our purpose. We would remember what we once were and become what this new age needs us to be. Lisa stepped forward. Elder Warden Kira, on behalf of the Colonial Defense Force and the peoples of the frontier, we welcome you. Though I have to warn, we do things a bit differently here. We're still figuring this out as we go. Sound like distant laughter echoed through the comm. As it should be, the best oaths are forged in the fire of necessity, not in the comfort of tradition. We look forward to learning these new ways. The docking procedures took hours, as the station's crew struggled to accommodate not just the new arrivals but their dragon companions. By the time everyone was settled, Threshold Station had been transformed from a human military outpost into something unprecedented. At your multi-species coalition headquarters. That evening, Lisa found herself on the observation deck again, got a gathering place that had become traditional for moments of significance. The deck was crowded now, humans and non-humans mingling, sharing stories, learning each other's names and customs. Lyra stood at the viewport, Maya sleeping peacefully in her arms. Exhausted from a day of showing the elder wardens around the station, Ember had coiled himself around the station's central spire. His presence a reassuring warmth that radiated through the structure. "Did you ever imagine this?" Lisa asked, joining the warden at the viewport. "When you were fleeing through dead systems, with Maya dying in your arms, did you imagine standing here, surrounded by allies, watching the birth of something new?" "No," Lyra admitted. "I had given up imagining futures. I only thought of surviving one more day, one more hour." She looked down at her sister's peaceful face. "But then we found you. Found humans who kept their word, even when it cost them everything. And I remembered that the universe can still surprise us. That hope isn't foolish, it's necessary." Admiral Grace Howard, who had arrived earlier that day for a strategic planning session, approached with 2 glasses of wine and a third container filled with what looked like liquid starlight, which she handed to Lyra. "The science team synthesized this from your biology scans. They think it's close to what your people would drink for celebrations." Lyra accepted it cautiously, took a sip, and her eyes widened. "This is ... remarkable. They captured the essence perfectly." "We're good at adapting," Grace said. "It's what humans do best. Figure out how to make things work, even when they shouldn't." She raised her glass. "I'd like to propose a toast. To the Warden's Guard. 2 partnerships across species. To standing firm when the darkness comes calling. 2 second chances," Lisa added, remembering that desperate moment in the docking bay, when she'd had to choose between tactical sense and basic decency. "To the children who won't have to run," Lyra said, holding Maya a little closer.